Welcome to Conversations with Coopman, Series 2, Making Sustainability Your Business, in association with One Tree Planted. One Tree Planted are a global, non-for-profit reforestation organisation. Joining myself and Mark on this episode is Derarca Dennis. Derarca is a partner at the global consulting firm EY. You're very welcome, Derarca. Thank you for taking the time to speak to us.
Morning, Mark. Morning, Andrew. Lovely to meet you both. I'm delighted to be here.
Good
Brilliant.
stuff. So, look, I think we'll obviously jump straight into Raka. I mean, given your role as as partner, you have a very high level, holistic viewpoint of what's going on in the market and what's facing the companies. I mean, in your opinion, where does the whole sustainability movement rank in terms of importance at the moment?
I think, to be honest with you, it's really elevated in the last year. It's really, really important. It's up there in the top five. And, maybe a year ago, you might have said it was fifth. I actually think it's getting closer to one. It's core to everyone's business these days. It's just, and there's a multiple reasons for that, but really it is up in the top five. And depending, where you sit, you might put it two, three, but it's definitely within the top five.
Absolutely, and I suppose myself, I actually work within finance, within recruitment as well, and I've been speaking to many finance directors over the last year, especially, and like that, it is it is gradually becoming to the fore, and I suppose from your perspective, and obviously you'd be dealing with a lot more on the consulting side. How is sustainability impacting the work of a financial director or someone within the senior finance capacity of companies?
It's a really interesting question, Mark, because every finance director across every industry is very much, I think, at the moment trying to figure out that their role is, and it is very much part of their role because fundamentally, I suppose finance directors are the powerhouse of information in many organizations. And if you think about the financial service sector in particular, like they're looking at how do they lend money, how do they jumpstart the economy, particularly post COVID. And one of the things that's really been demanded by general population is, guess what, we want to make sure where our money is put and how the economy is driven is done in a
Mm,
sustainable fashion. So finance directors are finding themselves saying, okay, well, I need to make sure I understand it, that I know how our business manages it, and then there's a piece around with incoming regulation. I'm going to have to help report on it. So I think for every finance director, while they might have come from a very
mm,
traditional background, there is new asks and new conversations being had. And then it really just depends on the structure of your sustainability agenda within your organization, whether you're core to it, whether you're in the periphery, are you a business partner to that team, or are you really in that team? So really exciting times and huge
mm.
opportunity for anyone as a finance director coming into a
And that
business.
is it. This is the whole movement around sustainability is creating these new opportunities. Like what exactly does that look like for financial directors and their respective companies?
So I suppose as you come into an organization, in the old days, you would have been number
Mm,
cruncher, you know, give me, look at the information very much on a historical basis. For a financial director coming in now,
mm,
actually, one of the exciting things is you're being asked to look at the business going forward and kind of look at projections, think about how you want to invest and how sustainability should be part of that. So when you look at it now, a finance director has been brought into the future looking
mm,
agenda, future proofing, and very much also saying, well, we know that investing in sustainability, whether it's creating a new portfolio of assets in a fund or whether it's looking at a business in terms of paper and packaging, what is sustainable and how do we invest in the technology behind it, or how do we understand the technology from a financial service perspective within our kind of portfolio businesses.
mm,
So the finance director's role is changing to be kind of a support, but also more knowledgeable about if you invest in X, what's the result of Y, and then does sustainability, can you explain that agenda from a sustainability perspective to your various stakeholders? And that's the other piece that's
mm,
changed. Before, we always talked about shareholders
mm,
and the shareholder
mm,
value. What's happened is the finance directors now have to look at the various
mm,
stakeholders and be able to speak to different stakeholders and to have, I suppose, uh, a response to the various needs of stakeholders. Whereas the investors would say, "I want to return a seven
mm,
percent on my shares. Thank you very much, and that's my
mm,
dividend. Happy
mm,
days." Whereas the stakeholder saying, "Well, tell me about your greenhouse emissions. Tell me about how you run your business. Tell me about your impact on the
mm,
environment. And by the way, depending on your products or a path to the market, tell me about what impact that
mm,
has." So if you're lending out sustainable products from a finance perspective and creating a fund, like,
mm,
what are you doing? Tell me about it and how it impacts the
mm,
economy. If you're driving a business, tell me about your supply chain. So the finance directors are actually getting pulled into the business much
mm.
more, I think it was kind of happening to a degree already, but sustainability has really pushed it to the next level because
Mm.
there's a huge need for collaboration,
Mm.
and the finance team is core to
Yeah,
that.
just one point on that as well, because like for me, and just from speaking to lots of people in the market, it is a change of mindset, and it's a change of mindset from both the investor and the financial director. Is there ever a resistance from people at the top table about this sustainable movement, or do you think are people genuinely buying into it?
Great question. Of course, look, there's going to be resistance. Look, there's every age profile sitting in business. Let's be
Mm.
honest. And there are the naysayers who say this isn't happening. Like, the world is not burning.
Mm.
But hey, our
Yeah.
finance minister in the budget very eloquently put it: the world is burning. We need
Mm.
to move, and we need to look after it. So there is a bit of resistance,
Mm.
and I suppose you got to be realistic that everyone's on a journey and at different stages of the journey. So
Mm.
I suppose as a organization, like, you have to be able to work with that, and I suppose that's a skill set that we will have to continue to develop. So
Mm.
yeah, there is definitely challenge.
Mm.
I think organizations are beginning to get pressure. So I think one thing that I find fascinating is I think there's this intangible called kind of social license to operate that businesses and finance directors need to think about. It's not something on your balance sheet. It's not something in your income statement. It's the people saying, actually, how you're running your business and how it's working, I get,
Mm.
and it's reflective of my need to have a sustainable economy.
Mm.
And that's quite interesting because it's about being transparent on your agenda, no matter where you're sitting. And I think, so you have employee demands, you have everything, but this social license to operate and kind of people saying, yeah, I want to be associated with that is going to become more important. Very hard to figure out how a finance director is going to articulate that,
Yes.
but I think
Mm.
it's quite important. And the other piece that's important is the regulatory
Mm.
developments. So you'll have seen there are change. The CSRD is coming in well, it's coming in currently, and
Mm.
we'll be reporting on it in the next kind of couple of years.
Mm.
And that's the Green Deal coming from Europe, saying we need to get ready, guys. We need to be ready to be carbon negative, but and we want to be the first continent in that space.
Mm.
And then sustainability finance, as I saw last week, announced the roadmap for us.
Exactly.
Hugely exciting, huge ambition for anyone in financial services.
Mm.
Because guess what? If we create a roadmap, we'll have another, what I would call a sustainability IFSC.
Mm.
So we'll have another hub
Mm.
that really reflects Ireland's ambition to have a place in the sustainability agenda for financial services. And I can't be more excited about that, to be quite frank, because it's us looking forward and saying, how can we move the dial on something that is critical to our planet, to be frank.
And when you look at a company's agenda, and you mentioned about the FD kind of being pulled out of the day to day into kind of more of a strategic role within the firm, and I imagine kind of for them to drive this agenda forward, articulating the level of investments within is going to be very important, and that will in turn kind of create the pace of which they move. I mean, what would be kind of your, I suppose, opinion or insights in terms of how that will look for a firm in terms of kind of the level of investment and the pace of which to kind of, because obviously we are under time pressure to get this agenda going.
We are. And, I suppose that's a real challenge, Andrew, because I'll take it in kind of a nuts and bolts business in the first instance, okay? Because, no matter where you sit, you need to be able to analyze a
Mm.
business. If
Mm.
you have a business that is highly asset intensive, and you have invested, you always invest with a glide path of X amount of years, okay? You're not going to see too many finance directors saying, I'm going to throw out all the stuff that's still usable. Like, because they've obviously
Mm.
invested and they have a capital injection in the business.
Mm.
So there's a challenge to say, well, actually, what you need to do now is repurpose. So, move to hydrogen, think about how and get them linked in to an energy grid, or you need to think slightly differently. So I think, what many of my clients are saying to me, look, we know that when we have kind of I look at the next 3 years budgets, that we have a huge amount of money to put into getting the platform right within our business. So the next couple of years are going to be critical to get it right and to do that transition phase, because that's quite expensive. And the problem with the transition phase is you don't see the return immediately.
Mm.
And that's where
Mm.
that anxiety around stakeholder versus shareholder
Mm.
really kicks in a business, because you'd be saying to your investors, yeah, we have this capital, we have this, and we're injecting it in XYZ, but the return mightn't be obvious. I know one of my clients looks at that as a portfolio effect, and he says, right, I know I need to put X amount in each year to keep the average return of Y, let's say 7%.
Mm.
Um, but he knows that some of them will actually be returning kind of at 11% and others at 3 because he's managing his assets.
Mm.
And I think that's the real challenge to articulate that and say, look, I'm not going to get the same return as I might like, and that's probably not palatable to many people, that you're not going to get the return
Mm.
you'd like, but the investment is there. But we need to do it quite urgently, to be quite frank, because we've seen commentary around fossil fuel industries and how the gap is actually going to be widening between 2030. In the financial services world, we're seeing
Mm.
lots more funds coming out and saying, actually, we're only going to invest in sustainable or ESG approved type businesses. So we know that the desire is there and people are willing to put money into spaces that are associated with the sustainability agenda.
Mm.
But then actually the businesses that they want to target or invest in have a journey to get there too. So it's a very complex environment. And I'd say, Andrew, like, the reality is it's not happening fast enough. We all know that.
Mm.
But that doesn't mean we should stop. That means we should probably
Mm.
pause, recharge, and move at pace.
Mm.
And we just
Mm.
continue to need that buy-in and that agitation
Mm.
across the business.
Mm.
Mm. And you mentioned just a moment ago about Pascal O'Donoghue coming out and saying the world is burning, and obviously the announcement to increase the carbon tax by €7.50 up to, was it kind of 41 euros per ton of carbon? I mean, in your opinion, do you feel that this carbon tax is an effective measure to tackle climate change?
Oh, I think it is. And look, we've committed to doing it. Like, this is something that we can't go back on. Would I have loved it to have been doubled and it's been 14 euros, or like, yeah, I would. But look, to be fair, the government has said this is what we're going to do, and they've struck a path. What's quite nice is it's very clear that the tax that's derived from that will then be allocated to projects that will drive sustainability agenda for Ireland. So I think that's really important. Um, we're eminently waiting the next carbon budget in the next couple of days. So it's exciting times. It's important to do it because, unfortunately, we tend to respond very well to sticks and not to carrots. And this is a bit of a stick.
Mm.
But one thing I would say that I kind of find a little bit frustrating, and I think we need to think about it in kind of the finance director um, kind of mindset, is we should actually be looking at that and allocating it internally as well. So in the real world, if you were to apply, a tax to each business unit and say, well, if you do X, we'll charge you for that premium. You'd be kind of thinking about it twice. You'd be wondering. So it's about, then you might be cleverly thinking, well, if I want to get a return at the bottom line at an EBIT level, well, then I need to do something about my cost structure or what I'm doing. And I think if we don't start thinking about that internally within our businesses, this carbon tax will just remain something at kind of the top level that we have to deal with as a business.
Mm.
So that's one of the challenges I think organizations need to kind of just take into account, to make it real for the people in the business.
Mm.
I think it was you who told me about a business that actually, was it you told me about the educational piece in carbon tax? No, maybe not.
No,
Fabulous
no.
story that I heard the other day chatting to it must have been a client then, but actually what they do is you charge a carbon tax for travel for business,
Mm.
to internally within the team, and then what they do is they use, they say it should be 7, they charge 10, and they use some of that funding into for education with regard to sustainability across the business. So it's a real
That's good.
cost to you for your business unit, but then instead of saying, well, you're not going to get something from it, they actually return it back to the business saying, right, okay, you now have, if €1,000 to spend on training or whatever the case may be. So they've kind of linked the cost or the punitive piece to
Mm.
actually something positive to try and get people to start thinking more about sustainability across the business. And unfortunately, I can't remember which business it was, but I
Mm.
thought it was a super idea.
But that's it, like, and I think that's
Mm.
what lots of companies need to be doing, and not even companies. I think society really, I think there has to be some sort of an incentive for people to change that mindset. I think that's what it is. Like, realistically, I think older generations are probably so used to, I come from a rural background. I live in the Midlands. It's all about fire, turf, and coal. You know what I mean? Whereas, moving into a sustainable environmental way, it's a huge mindset. It's a huge change. I suppose the question I'll probably ask is how are EY responding to that, or how are you guys? Because it's such a complex, and there's so many different stakeholders, so many different demographics. It's a huge moving thing.
It is like, we have an agenda, like all organizations ourselves internally. So we
Mm.
have, like, we work with clients, but we also work with ourselves.
Mm.
So, like, for example, like, 2 3 years ago, I got my first carbon statement to tell me what impact I was having on the environment.
Right.
I can tell you, I sat up in my chair and said, "What?" But actually, it was a great idea. So we had engaged. So we used one agency for travel, and we had engaged them and said, "Right, this is what we want information we want to have about all our employees across
Mm,
the business.
mm,
When they book a train, plane, all the rest, it goes into their account, for want of a better expression.
right.
And then on an annual basis, I get this letter sent saying, 'Hey, Derarca, guess what? This is your carbon emissions in the current year.' And like,
Right.
it did make me wonder and go, okay, could I
Mm,
have done that differently? Now,
mm,
COVID has been a blessing.
mm,
COVID has actually stopped us all moving to some degree
mm,
and made us reassess. But so internally, we've done a huge amount of projects. We're carbon negative at the moment. It's really exciting stuff. We've really moved our agenda, but like, we've had to stop and question ourselves. And then externally with clients, we have a fantastic sustainability team across the whole practice, working with financial service clients, non-financial service clients. So what we've done is we've invested in, I suppose, subject matter experts across different businesses.
mm,
Which has been really exciting.
mm,
One of my colleagues, Fallon, she actually went and worked for Prince Charles's accounting for sustainability on a secondment. Another one of my colleagues worked for Sustainability Finance Ireland, again, helping build the Irish roadmap. So
mm,
we've really, I suppose, we've invested in people, but we've also then invested in the business community to try and make sure that our insight is brought to us and we can really share and help shape.
mm.
Because ultimately, it's great to kind of be able to do that and to bring knowledge and share knowledge. So,
Absolutely.
as a business, we've looked and hired people, and we're continuing to hire people. Anybody out there, give me a shout. We're continuing to hire people who are really interested in this agenda, but who have a real kind of point of view.
Mm,
And then bringing that back to our clients, because our
mm,
clients are all, trying to do the right thing,
mm.
but in many cases are resource constrained,
Yeah.
and and that's a real challenge.
Yeah, just on that point then as well, because I know obviously I've read that report for the Irish Sustainable Finance Roadmap, and I know you guys focused on 5 pillars, and I know this isn't your forte, but I know one of the ones is around developing talent, and you've already touched on, you know, Dublin or Ireland has an opportunity to become the sustainable IFSC in, let's say, 2030. Where, what type of jobs, what type of roles do you foresee coming up that companies will need to invest in?
So what's going to come up is there's going to be roles in terms of the ESG reporting, the CSRD reporting, where
Okay.
people are actually going to have to respond from a regulatory perspective, on, for each business.
Mm,
So those roles are going to be quite different. Previously, and we're also going to have sustainability accounting as standards coming in as well
of
through
course.
ISB. We have the SASB ones out there. So there's going to be a new form of reporting, and that reporting is it's going to be a hybrid type of reporting where you're looking at kind of economic, social, and governance aspects. So you're going to be bringing in roles like that, but those roles are also going to be, very much embedded in the business. So I think that's going to be quite a change for people coming out of people are coming out of contract, people are moving across business, but we're also seeing people go, actually, I spent 10 years in packaging, and actually, I don't want to be talking about packaging anymore. I want to be talking about sustainability
Right.
in the context of that. You
Yes.
also have, like, I was speaking to somebody the other day, and they've been working in asset management for the last 20 odd years. I'm
Mm.
aging this poor person. But
Mm.
actually, what it was really interesting is they said, actually, I'm really interested in getting involved in the sustainability agenda. So what I'd like to do is, they've done the CFA in sustainability. So they went off and they kind of have repurposed themselves
Mm.
and now want to come and work in the organization, helping others think about how to shape their agenda. So I think the roles are going to be different. I think it's
Mm.
going to be constant learning. I think the
Yes.
talent agenda is quite exciting because we're all learning on this journey. There's no one that has this right.
No.
Okay. So if somebody knocks on your door and says, Mark, I am the top notch person in sustainability
Mm.
and I have loads of experience, I'd be saying, not really. You're on a journey. We're all on this journey.
Exactly.
So that's exciting for
Mm.
people who want to constantly learn and improve their skill set. I think it's a great place to be. Financial services has always been kind of ahead of their time in Ireland. I mean, when the IFSC was set up, everyone thought we were mad,
Yeah.
and that it was never going to happen. It was going to be this big white elephant. And guess what? It worked. It was
Mm.
great, and it is
Mm.
great. And I think this is the next iteration. I
Mm.
think the roadmap is it perfect? No, but it's
Mm.
got some really good points and a real sense of direction.
Mm.
And when the finance community gets behind it, as they always do,
Mm.
um, it's very powerful,
Yeah.
very very powerful. So I think there's great
Mm.
opportunity, and for people, it's to think about how would they fit in, and what journey they want to go on, and it'll be a learning journey and
Mm.
one of just collaboration. So I think keys key skills are communication, collaboration,
Mm.
and a desire to constantly learn and support
Mm.
clients or the business, depending where you're
Yes.
sitting.
Yeah. And for people that come into you that say, look, I do have an interest in this space, and I do maybe want to make that transition. You kind of touched upon it there around kind of communication, etc. But what are kind of the key attributes that you would look for as a hiring manager, as a firm, to bring people into more the sustainability focused work?
Well, I suppose both myself and one of my partners, Danny Buckley, we always sit and meet the person, and say, let's meet the person and look at their desire, their personal ambition and desire.
Mm,
Because if it's not there, when people are coming to us, we're looking and we kind of go, if you're changing your role, why are you changing your role? And then what
mm,
motivates that ambition?
Mm.
And then how do you see yourself fitting within consulting organizations? Quite different,
mm,
because you are actually, there's constant change, constant challenge. For people who don't like losing things, it's not a great place to be, because for as many pitches as you win, you probably lose two or three. So you need to be able to shape your idea, a bit of vision in terms of where you see sustainability. Because while you learn on the journey, and we're all learning, there is a piece around what is your point of view and where do you see kind of. I always say to people, if I was to give you, kind of a blank check, where would you like to spend your time and really have an effect on a business or multiple businesses?
Mm.
And that's always an interesting question, because people go, "What?" I'm like, "No, no, genuinely. If I was to tell you tomorrow, here's 200 hours, go figure out what you think should be fixed in our business community."
Mm.
And it's a great conversation because it makes you think. So anyone listening to this should be thinking about,
mm,
well, what would I do? What could
Mm.
I do? Because then, working in a professional service firm, then we can make it happen. And that's
Mm.
what I love about it. That's why I've remained in professional service for so long. If it's in the insurance space, I'll ring James Moore and say, James, by the way, here's an opportunity. What you think? And he'll go, okay, great. Let's have a think about that. And you know what I mean? So that's the exciting piece about working in professional service firms.
Mm.
You can imagine things. You get a white piece of paper, and you work with your clients.
Mm.
And the one thing I like about sustainability is you actually get to draw people in from all across the business who have particular expertise and a focus on sustainability. So you can get a very interesting solution for a client, which isn't immediately obvious when you go and have the first conversation.
Mm.
So again, when I think about people coming into the business, you have to be able to go into those chats and go, I don't have the immediate answer for you, but let me listen,
Yeah.
let me understand your problem. Invariably might have to take it away, have a think, and come back and say, this is what I heard, this is what I think I heard, this is what I understood your ask is, here's what I think is a solution. Am I right? Am I wrong? And you shape it together. And that's a really interesting thing to do. Um, and what's quite exciting then is, as you become more experienced, you can bring that experience across to many clients and help them on a journey. And you can connect the clients to each other, which is also a beautiful thing to do, because
Mm.
then they create a
mm,
network themselves. So there's lots of opportunity, and
mm.
I have to say, I love it. Not going to lie.
And I think, lastly, from my side anyway, and then kind of bringing it back to the client's piece, we kind of talked about the role of the FD, and if for people listening that are in senior finance roles, head of roles, facing this agenda over the next few years, what would kind of be your few nuggets of advice for them to take on board? If maybe they're not speaking to you per se, but they're listening to this, what would be kind of some of the key nuggets of advice for them to take on board?
If you haven't started, start now. Never too late. The train has not left the station. It's on
Mm.
its way out, but you've still time to jump on from a sustainability perspective. I would think about where you are today in terms of your journey, whether you've started or if you or not. And even if you have started, it would be about saying, what are your immediate needs in terms of sustainability, in terms of what are you being asked as an organization? And then get people on the train with you. This is
Mm.
never happening on your own.
Yeah.
So don't think that you're going to be the eco warrior who sorts out your bank or your insurance company. As much as you have a passion, that passion has to be harnessed with others, and then be realistic about the time frame, because it's to do it well and do it right, you need a little bit of time. But that's okay, because every analyst that I've spoken to loves that transparency when people say, not there yet, but here's my ambition, here's how I plan to do it. So that
Mm.
is absolutely the way to do it. So, don't be afraid, jump on the train, bring a few pals, and it will come good for you.
Brilliant. And hopefully that train turns into a steam train and off we go.
Absolutely. A bullet in Japan. One of those
Follow.
bullets.
And they go mighty fast. Well, look, it's been an absolute
Indeed.
pleasure having you on, and a really fantastic insight. So I think it goes without saying, if anyone has any follow-up questions for you, wants to reach out directly, you're happy for them to do so.
Absolutely delighted to entertain all conversations.
Perfect. Well, look, thank you again, Derarca, and look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Raka.
Thanks for joining us on Conversations with Coopman. If you are looking to hire excellent talent or considering your next career move in front office, risk, compliance, or accounting, please reach out to a member of our specialist recruitment team. If you have any questions about the financial services market, feel free to leave a comment below and we will get back to you soon. And if you like this podcast episode, we'd greatly appreciate a video like, or even better, subscribe to our channel to stay up to date with our latest releases.